The day I discovered my wife's infidelity was etched in my memory like a brand. It started like any other weekday, the sun rising lazily over the horizon, casting a warm glow through our bedroom window. I woke up beside her, her hair splayed across the pillow, a serene expression on her face as she slept. I felt a twinge of affection, a fleeting moment of gratitude for our life together. But that morning would soon unravel everything I thought I knew. I had a day off from work, a rare occurrence in my busy schedule, and I decided to take advantage of it. I planned to surprise her with breakfast in bed. As I tiptoed around the kitchen, the aroma of coffee filled the air, mingling with the scent of sizzling bacon. I was humming a tune, preoccupied with thoughts of her smile when I heard the faint sound of my phone vibrating on the counter. It was a message from a friend, but what caught my attention was the notification from my security app. The camera in our driveway was activated. Curiosity piqued. I glanced at the screen. What I saw next felt like a punch to the gut. There on the screen was my wife, laughing and embracing my personal driver, James. The way they interacted was intimate, far too comfortable for mere acquaintances. My heart raced and I could feel the blood drain from my face. I watched in disbelief as they shared a kiss, a moment that shattered my world into a million irretrievable pieces. A wave of emotions crashed over me: anger, disbelief, confusion. My mind raced as I processed the betrayal. How could she? How could he? I felt like a character in a tragic play, watching my life unfold in slow motion. My hands trembled as I put the phone down, and the weight of the moment crushed me. I had to confront her. There was no other option. When I walked back into the bedroom, the air felt thick with tension. She stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Good morning, love," she said, her voice soft and inviting. I couldn't respond. The image of her with James played on a loop in my mind, drowning out her sweet tone. "Why?" I managed to choke out, my voice low and steadied with the effort of not breaking down. The look of confusion on her face quickly morphed into one of realization. She knew. "What are you talking about?" she asked, feigning innocence, but I could see the flicker of guilt in her eyes. "Don't play games with me, Sarah. I saw you with him." I spat, my emotions spilling over. I felt anger boiling up inside me, and I struggled to keep it contained. "How could you do this to us?" Her expression shifted from confusion to panic, and she opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I felt a mix of satisfaction and pain watching her squirm under the weight of my accusation. I had never seen her so vulnerable, and it twisted something inside me. "I can explain," she finally blurted out, her voice shaky. "It's not what you think." But I didn't want to hear her excuses. I felt betrayed, and the thought of her with him filled me with a rage that was unfamiliar. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to make her feel the pain I was feeling. "You think I'm just going to sit here and let you lie to me?" I said, my voice rising. In that moment I felt a surge of power. I was the one who had been wronged, and I could make choices now. I could take control of this situation, and I would. I could make her feel as trapped as I felt. "Get out," I said, my voice steady and cold. "I need time to think." She opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off with a glare. "Just go." I watched her leave the room, my heart racing with a mix of anger and sorrow. I was left standing there, feeling like a ghost in my own home, surrounded by memories that had suddenly turned sour. That was the moment everything changed. I had to do something. I had to act. The emotional fallout from that confrontation hit me like a tidal wave. I paced our home, no longer able to recognize the space that had once been filled with love and laughter. The walls felt like they were closing in on me, each corner a reminder of the life I thought we had built together. I could hear echoes of our past, her laughter, our shared dreams, the quiet moments that now felt tainted. The betrayal sat heavy in my chest, a gnawing ache that refused to fade. Anger was the most accessible emotion, a fierce fire that burned brightly within me. I wanted to lash out, to scream, to break something. I felt like a stranger in my own skin, a man transformed by the revelation of his wife's unfaithfulness. How could she do this to me, to us? I had trusted her completely, and now that trust lay in ruins. I sank into the living room couch, trying to find solace in the familiar surroundings. But the cushions felt foreign, the soft fabric a mockery of the comfort I once found here. I thought about James, my personal driver, the man I had entrusted not just with my car but with my wife. The image of them together replayed in my mind, taunting me. I could see his smug smile, the way he had always flirted with her, the way he had crossed a line I never thought possible. As the hours passed, I oscillated between rage and despair. I picked up my phone, scrolling through our pictures from happier times, but the memories felt like knives, each one a reminder of how deeply I had been deceived. My heart raced with each image, the smiles frozen in time now tainted by the reality of her betrayal. I felt sick to my stomach. I knew I had to act, but what could I do? Confronting her again felt pointless. She had already shown me who she really was. Instead, I focused on James. The thought of firing him came to me like a flash of inspiration, a way to reclaim some sense of control over my life. I wanted him to feel the consequences of his actions, to understand that he had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. The decision was swift and almost instinctual. I imagined the look on Sarah's face when she realized that she had lost her means of transportation, her freedom. It was a small but powerful form of revenge, a way to show her that her choices had repercussions. I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction at the thought of her being stranded, forced to confront the reality of what she had done. I called James, my hands shaking as I dialed his number. The phone rang only once before he picked up. "Hey, Mr. Thompson, everything okay?" His voice was cheerful, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. "No, it's not," I said, my voice steady but cold. "I need you to come over. We need to talk." "Sure, be there in a few," he replied, completely oblivious to the gravity of the situation. I hung up, feeling a sense of anticipation mixed with dread. I was about to confront the man who had betrayed not just my trust but my marriage. When James arrived, he walked into the house with his usual casual demeanor, a smile plastered on his face. I felt a surge of anger looking at him, the man who had taken advantage of my trust. "Have a seat, James," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Everything all right?" he asked, concern finally breaking through his facade. "Not really," I replied, my voice low. "You know why I called you here, don't you?" His smile faltered, and I could see the realization wash over him. "Mr. Thompson, cut the crap," I interrupted. "You know what you did. You think I don't know about you and Sarah." His expression turned defensive, and for a moment I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. "It's not what you think. Not what I think," I shot back. "You kissed my wife, James. You crossed a line that should never have been crossed. You're fired." I watched as he processed my words, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "You can't be serious," he stammered. "I've been your driver for years. And you've been inappropriate with my wife for just as long," I snapped. "You think I'm going to keep you on after this?" His face turned pale, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction as he realized the full weight of my decision. "Please, Mr. Thompson, I made a mistake. I'll do anything to make it right," he pleaded, desperation creeping into his voice. "No," I said firmly. "You've lost your job. Pack your things and leave." As he gathered his belongings, I felt a strange mix of power and emptiness. Watching him walk out of my life felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, but the hollowness inside me remained. I wanted to relish this moment, but instead I felt like I was just digging a deeper hole of resentment. Once he left, I sat back down on the couch, staring blankly at the wall. I had taken a stand, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was only beginning to unravel the mess my life had become. The consequences of my actions were still to come, and I knew that what I had done was just the beginning. After firing James, a strange quiet enveloped the house. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the sound of my own breathing. I felt the weight of my actions settle in, and as the hours passed, I began to realize that my decision came with consequences far beyond just severing ties with my personal driver. I had opened a Pandora's box, and I was bracing myself for what would come next. When Sarah returned home that evening, I braced myself for the confrontation I knew was inevitable. She walked through the door, her face brightening when she saw me, but the moment she noticed the tension in the air, her smile faltered. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. I studied her, searching for any sign of remorse, but all I saw was confusion and a hint of defiance. "You really don't know," I replied, letting my anger simmer just below the surface. "You don't know why I fired James." Her eyes widened, and I could see the gears turning in her mind. "You can't be serious. You didn't fire him because of us, did you?" I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me again. "You think I'd let that slide? You think I'd just ignore what you did?" "Please, let's talk about this," she pleaded, her voice rising in pitch. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It was just a moment of weakness." "A moment of weakness," I scoffed. "You kissed my driver, Sarah. This isn't just a mistake you can brush off. You made a choice, and now you're going to deal with the consequences." Her expression shifted from shock to anger. "You can't just take away my means of transportation. That's not fair," she shouted, her voice echoing through the empty rooms. I could see the panic rising in her, and a part of me felt a twisted satisfaction at her desperation. "Fair? Is it fair that you betrayed me? Is it fair that you threw away everything we built together for a fling with my driver?" I shot back, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. We stood in the living room, the silence stretching between us like a chasm. I could see the anger and frustration in her eyes, but more than that, I saw fear. She was scared of losing her independence, her freedom, and I couldn't help but revel in that fear. "I can't believe you would do this," she said, her voice trembling. "You're punishing me for something I regret. You're being cruel." "Cruel?" I echoed, incredulous. "You think I'm being cruel? You were the one who chose to betray me. You were the one who made this choice." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, and I felt a pang of guilt pierce through my anger, but I quickly pushed it aside. I had to stay strong. I couldn't let her manipulate me with her tears. "You can't have it both ways, Sarah," I said, my voice firm. "You can't cheat on me and expect everything to go back to normal." "I'll find another way to get around," she said defiantly, but I could hear the tremor in her voice. "I'll call a cab or an Uber. It doesn't matter." "Sure, you can do that," I replied, crossing my arms. "But you'll have to live with the consequences of your actions. You'll have to figure this out on your own." The argument spiraled into a back-and-forth that felt like a verbal tug-of-war, each of us pulling on the frayed edges of our relationship. I could see Sarah's frustration growing, but I was beyond caring. I was in a place of raw emotion, fueled by betrayal and a desire for retribution. As the night wore on, I realized that this was more than just about transportation. This was about power and control. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices, to understand that actions have consequences. I wanted her to experience the vulnerability that I felt, the helplessness that came from being betrayed by someone you loved. Finally, after what felt like hours of arguing, she stormed out of the living room, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. I heard her muffled cries, and I knew she was hurting, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. I was too consumed by my own pain and anger. I spent the rest of the evening replaying our argument in my mind, my emotions a tangled mess of anger, sadness, and the faintest glimmer of regret. I knew I had crossed a line by taking away her independence, but in that moment I felt justified. I wanted her to understand the gravity of her actions, to feel the repercussions of her betrayal. As I lay in bed that night, the silence enveloped me like a heavy blanket. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was on the precipice of something much larger than just a marital dispute. This was a turning point, a moment that would define the future of our relationship. I had made my choice, and now I had to live with its consequences. The days that followed were a blur of tension and silence. The atmosphere in our home was charged, a palpable mixture of resentment and unresolved feelings. Sarah and I moved around each other like strangers, avoiding eye contact and conversation. It was as if the very air between us had thickened, suffocating any hope of reconciliation. Sarah tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy, but I could see the cracks in her facade. She was no longer the vibrant woman I had married. Instead, she seemed lost, her spirit dulled by the reality of her choices. I watched as she navigated her days without a car, relying on rides from friends or public transportation, her independence stripped away. Each time I saw her waiting for a bus or hailing a cab, a part of me felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. She was experiencing the consequences of her betrayal, and I was determined to let her feel every bit of it. Yet, beneath that satisfaction lay a growing unease. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was playing a dangerous game. The power dynamics had shifted dramatically, and I was unsure of where it would lead us. I had taken away her means of transportation, but I had also taken away a part of her autonomy. My actions felt justified, but they also felt like a descent into a darker part of myself. One evening, as I sat on the couch, scrolling through my phone, I heard the front door creak open. Sarah had come home late, and as she walked into the living room, I could see the exhaustion etched on her face. She looked tired, worn down by the strain of our situation. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated. The last few days had been a roller coaster of emotions, and I wasn't sure I was ready to engage in another round of arguments. But I could see the desperation in her eyes, and a part of me wanted to hear her out. "Fine," I replied, setting my phone aside. She took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "I know I messed up. I know what I did was wrong," she began, her voice trembling. "But punishing me by firing James, by taking away my transportation, it feels cruel. I feel trapped." "Trapped?" I scoffed. "You did this to yourself, Sarah. You chose to betray me, to throw everything away. I'm not going to let you pretend like nothing happened." "I'm not pretending. I'm trying to take responsibility for my actions," she insisted, her voice rising slightly. "But I can't live like this. I can't keep going without a car. It's suffocating." I watched her, feeling a mixture of anger and pity. "And what do you expect me to do? Just forgive you and pretend it didn't happen?" "No, I don't expect that," she said, her eyes pleading. "I just want to figure this out. I want to work on our marriage, but I can't do that if I feel like I'm being punished constantly." Her words struck a chord within me. I could see the pain in her eyes, and for a brief moment I felt a flicker of compassion. But then I remembered the betrayal, the hurt that had been inflicted upon me. "You want to work on our marriage?" I asked, my tone skeptical. "What does that even mean after what you've done?" "It means I want to be honest with you. I want to rebuild the trust that's been broken," she replied, her voice steadying. "But I can't do that if you won't let me." I felt my resolve wavering. The anger that had fueled my actions began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of uncertainty. Could I truly forgive her? Could we really rebuild what had been shattered? "I don't know if I can," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "You hurt me, Sarah. You shattered my trust." "I know," she said softly, her eyes glistening with tears. "But please let me prove to you that I can be better. Let me show you that I want to make this right." I struggled with her words, torn between the desire for revenge and the longing for the love we once shared. The power I had felt in taking away her freedom began to feel hollow, a temporary victory that did nothing to heal the wounds of betrayal. "Maybe I can let you use the car again," I said slowly, testing the waters. "But only if you agree to go to couples therapy with me. We need to address what happened and work through it together." Her eyes widened, and I could see a flicker of hope in her expression. "I'd be willing to do that. I want to make this work, I really do." I nodded, still unsure of what the future held for us. It was a fragile truce, a tentative step toward rebuilding what had been lost. But as I watched her wipe away her tears, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this was the beginning of a new chapter, one where we could face the fallout together, rather than in opposition. That night, as we lay in bed, the silence felt different. It was still heavy, but there was a sense of possibility lingering in the air. I couldn't erase the betrayal from my mind, but maybe we could find a way to move forward. The road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but for the first time in days, I felt like we might be able to navigate it together. The following weeks felt like a fragile dance between hope and despair. We started attending couples therapy, a step I had once considered unthinkable. Sitting in that therapist's office, I felt exposed, as if all my vulnerabilities were laid bare for scrutiny. The therapist, a kind woman with a calming presence, guided us through the murky waters of our emotions. Each session felt like peeling back layers of a wound that had yet to heal. Sarah and I shared our feelings, our fears, and our regrets. I listened as she spoke about her feelings of loneliness and how the connection with James had been a misguided attempt to fill a void. It was painful to hear her recount her betrayal, to hear her admit that she had sought validation outside our marriage. But there was also a part of me that understood her pain. I had been so wrapped up in my own hurt that I had neglected to see the cracks forming in our relationship. Our sessions were often filled with tears, both hers and mine. I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions, anger, sadness, and sometimes a flicker of hope. The therapist encouraged us to communicate openly, to express our needs and desires without fear of judgment. It was a learning process, one that required patience and vulnerability. As we continued to navigate our feelings, I began to see glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with. Sarah was trying, genuinely trying to rebuild what had been broken. She took small steps to reconnect, surprising me with thoughtful gestures, cooking my favorite meals, leaving little notes around the house, and even planning a weekend getaway. It felt like she was making an effort to show that she was committed to our marriage, and it stirred something within me. But just as I began to feel a sense of hope, the weight of betrayal would crash down on me again. I would remember the sight of her with James, the laughter they shared, and the intimacy they had built outside of our marriage. It was a constant battle within myself, a tug-of-war between wanting to forgive and struggling to forget. One evening, after a particularly emotional therapy session, we returned home and sat in the living room, the tension palpable. "I know this is hard for you," Sarah said softly, her eyes searching mine. "I just want you to know that I'm here and I'm committed to making this work. Sometimes it feels like I'm stuck in a cycle of anger and hurt," I admitted, my voice heavy with emotion. "I want to move forward, but it's hard to let go of what you did." "I understand," she said, her voice laced with empathy. "But I need you to trust me again. I can't do this alone." I sighed, feeling the weight of her words. Trust was a fragile thing, easily shattered and difficult to rebuild. "I want to trust you, but it's going to take time," I replied. "I need to see that you're not going to slip back into old habits." "I promise I won't," she said earnestly. "I've learned so much about myself through this process. I want to be better for you, for us." Her sincerity struck a chord within me, and for the first time in a long while I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps we could emerge from this stronger, perhaps we could find a way to heal together. But just as quickly, doubt crept in. Could I really forgive her? Could I ever truly forget? As the days turned into weeks, the emotional roller coaster continued. I found myself oscillating between moments of connection and waves of doubt. I would catch her gaze across the dinner table, and for a fleeting moment I would feel that spark, the love that had once brought us together. But then the memories of betrayal would seep in, clouding my vision and filling my heart with uncertainty. One night, after a particularly intense therapy session, we decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. The air was crisp, and the stars twinkled overhead, casting a beautiful glow on the world around us. I felt a sense of peace wash over me as we walked side by side, our fingers intertwined. "Look at the stars," Sarah said, her voice soft and contemplative. "They remind me that even in darkness there's beauty. We just have to find it together." Her words resonated with me, and for the first time I felt a sense of unity in our struggle. I squeezed her hand, feeling the warmth of her touch, and in that moment I realized that healing wouldn't come overnight. It would take time, patience, and an unwavering commitment from both of us. As we continued to walk, I couldn't help but wonder about our future. Was reconciliation possible? Could we truly rebuild our marriage after such a deep betrayal? The questions loomed large, but for the first time I felt a sense of determination to find the answers together. The road ahead would be challenging, but perhaps we could navigate it side by side, learning from our mistakes and growing stronger in the process. I had taken away Sarah's independence, but now we were both learning to reclaim our lives and our love. It was a small step, but it felt significant. We were on the path to healing, and I was willing to take that journey with her, one day at a time. As the weeks turned into months, the journey of healing became a tapestry woven with both struggles and victories. Each therapy session peeled back layers of our relationship, revealing not just the wounds of betrayal, but also the roots of love that had been buried beneath the hurt. We began to understand each other better, recognizing the vulnerabilities that had led us to this painful crossroads. The emotional turmoil I had experienced began to subside, replaced by a cautious optimism. I still had moments of doubt, nights when I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying memories of her betrayal. But they were becoming less frequent. I was learning to focus on the present, on the effort Sarah was making to rebuild our relationship. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching an old movie, I caught a glimpse of the woman I had fallen in love with. Her laughter echoed through the room, and I felt a warmth spread through me, a sense of comfort that had been missing for so long. It reminded me that beneath the pain there was still a flicker of love waiting to be reignited. "Do you remember our first date?" Sarah asked, her eyes sparkling with nostalgia. I smiled, recalling the nervous excitement of that night. "Of course. You wore that blue dress and I could hardly take my eyes off you." She chuckled, a sound I had missed. "You were so awkward, stumbling over your words. I thought I'd have to carry the conversation." I laughed, the tension between us easing as we shared those memories. It felt good to reminisce, to celebrate the moments that had brought us together. It was a reminder that love, while fragile, could also be resilient. As the therapy sessions continued, we learned to communicate more openly. We discussed our fears, our dreams, and the changes we wanted to make in our lives. I shared my insecurities about trust, and Sarah expressed her commitment to being transparent with me. It was a delicate balance, but we were both willing to put in the effort. One day, as we were driving home from therapy, Sarah turned to me, her expression serious. "I know I've hurt you and I can't change what happened, but I want to do everything I can to rebuild your trust." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. "It's going to take time, Sarah. I can't just erase the past, but I want to believe that we can move forward." "I understand," she said, her voice steady. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I love you and I want to make this work." Her sincerity struck a chord within me, and I felt a flicker of hope ignite. Love had brought us together once, and perhaps it could do so again. But I also knew that love alone wouldn't be enough. Trust had to be earned, and we both had to be willing to put in the work. As we navigated our new reality, I found myself reflecting on the lessons I had learned through this experience. I realized that love is not just about the good times. It's also about weathering the storms together. It's about facing the darkness and emerging stronger on the other side. One night, as we sat together on the couch, I turned to Sarah, my heart full. "I think we're getting there," I said, my voice soft. "We're moving in the right direction." She smiled, the warmth of her gaze washing over me. "I believe that too. We've come so far, and I know we can keep going." And in that moment, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I was willing to walk it with her. We had faced the depths of betrayal and emerged on the other side, ready to build something new together. As we continued our journey of healing, I knew there would be challenges ahead, but I also knew that we had the tools to face them. We had learned to communicate, to be vulnerable, and to support each other in ways we hadn't before. With each passing day, the shadows of betrayal grew fainter, replaced by the light of hope and renewal. I could see a future where trust could be rebuilt, where love could flourish once more. We were both committed to making it work, and that was a powerful foundation to build upon. As I lay in bed that night, I turned to Sarah, who was already drifting off to sleep. I felt a sense of gratitude wash over me. We had been through the fire, and though it had been painful, it had also taught us invaluable lessons about love, trust, and forgiveness. In the stillness of the night, I whispered a silent promise to myself, to embrace the journey ahead, to cherish the moments of connection, and to never take our love for granted again. Together, we would navigate the complexities of our marriage, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next.